Koto katoa, nā mai haere mai, welcome everyone to today's Koata Hātepe Regulatory Processes Committee meeting. So please let myself or the Democracy Advisor know if you intend to leave the meeting. And we are going to aim for morning tea at 10:45, resuming again at 11, and hopefully be finished our agenda in time for lunch. Right, so I would like to start with the karakia. Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā tara tara ki tai, e hi aki ana te atakura, he teo, he huka, he hohu, tihei, Māori ora. I don't have apologies, but maybe we'll put one in for Councillor Abdurrahman for lateness. I am expecting him to be here. So I move that we take an apology for lateness from Councillor Abdurrahman. Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you. We will now vote. Yeah. I'm sure he'll be here very shortly. Right. Well, that was carried. So, do we have any conflicts of interest to declare today? I don't think so. Confirmation of minutes. So I move the motion that this committee approves the minutes of our meeting held on 24th of August 2023, which have been circulated, and that those minutes be taken as read and confirmed as an accurate record of the meeting. Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Puiwi Holden. We will now put that motion and vote on it. That's been carried. So there are no items not on the agenda, so we will now start with our public participation. But just before we do, could I ask someone to text Councillor Abdurrahman just to see what his intentions actually are? He probably is on his way. So I'd like to invite, to start with, Dan Archer to our table, and you're very welcome to either sit at the table or go to the podium. And we have a rule that it's 5 minutes, and that does need to include questions if you wish. Yes, please, because...
Kia ora koutou, ko Dan Archer taku ingoa. Each day can rain or shine, my 4-year-old daughter and I commute by bike between Naia, where we live, Wilton, where she goes to daycare, and Kelburn, where I'm a second-year public health PhD candidate. We ride because I want her to feel engaged with her local environment and community, because I care about the climate that she will inherit, because our journey is not served well by public transport, because I don't want to be a part of traffic, and because as a student I can't afford to pay for parking every day. She loves being on the bike with me. While we ride, she asks questions about the neighbours we wave to, points out fat kiddidu on the power lines near Otari, discusses the mist rising off the mountains, and tells me about how boring and smelly cars are. But part of our commute makes me nervous for our safety. I've cycled as a commuter for 20 years, including in Auckland and in London, two vastly busier cities where my commutes have felt safer. Churchill Drive between Crofton Downs and Wilton is a mostly empty transport corridor for speeding utes, impatient drivers, buses and heavy trucks. There are numerous blind, sweeping left-hand corners, such as those opposite Bupa and Bowen Hospital, and at these pinch points where the road narrows due to a turning lane into the private healthcare providers, cars travelling at speed regularly cut across the small painted white line that keeps us safe in the left-hand shoulder. I strongly agree with the installation of uphill bike lanes on Churchill Drive. Creating a physically segregated space for bikers will give drivers a visual awareness to give us cyclists space. These roads are mostly wide, and there's room for a cycle lane. Despite the width in most places, drivers still come dangerously close to us. The uphill sections are practically empty stretches. There are only 2 or 3 driveways, and I've never seen a car parked on these uphill stretches, presumably because they're worried for the safety of their cars for the same reasons I'm worried for the safety of my life. I also believe that making the road narrower for drivers will help to reduce the speed, which has been a clear theme from the submissions. I also support the retention of on-street car parks near 18 Churchill Drive. Although there is a risk of parked vehicles opening the doors into cyclists, most cyclists in this downhill direction tend to move at similar speeds to cars and move into the middle of the lane for their safety. It is clear from the feedback that there are very few legitimate objections to the installations of bike lanes. The overwhelming majority of feedback comes from concerns the loss of car parks outside number 18 Churchill, and as I've mentioned, I support that. That's fine. There's an obvious theme from submissions regarding the traffic calming benefits of retaining cars in this area for residents who cross the street to access Izzard Park, and perhaps the council would heed these concerns and go one step forward and consider putting a raised pedestrian crossing in this area to further slow down traffic, which would make it more safe for families crossing this road. Thank you for your time, and thank you for helping to make Wellington a more cycle-friendly city for people who wear helmets this big. Giving people the option to cycle safely is a no-brainer. Cycling is fun. It reduces the number of cars on the road, which is better for people who have no choice but to drive. It makes us engage with our beautiful surroundings in a more meaningful way. It also makes our cities healthier. Academic research clearly shows that people who cycle regularly have more positive emotional well-being, as well as a 35% reduced risk of dying from any cause. And if more people cycled in the world, then the world my daughter inherits might be a little bit brighter. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Are there questions? Anyone? No. Thank you. You've been very clear and you've made your point strongly. Thank you very much. Can we please move to Anne Shelton?
I've got a loud voice, so hopefully you heard that. Awesome. So yes, I'm also a cyclist, and my partner and I both cycle regularly, so we're absolutely not opposed to the cycleway. We're very happy to have a cycleway, and for all the points that Dan's just outlined, we wholeheartedly support the council's wellbeing strategy and the idea of getting more people into walking and taking public transport for all sorts of reasons, not least of which the hideous climate emergency that we are facing. So there's all kinds of pluses for the cycleway. So yes, we are very happy to have a cycleway on our road, and that will increase the amount of time that we cycle, because I actually have been knocked off my bike in Wellington on Taranaki Street and had to engage with the police because, when it happened, the person who did it was not helpful, or, it was quite a tricky situation. So someone cut in front of me. So having a cycle lanes is really important and will definitely increase the amount of people who feel happy to cycle. And so we're also very happy. Our understanding is we now have this provision opposite our house, which is on the cycle lane side, and we now have this provision for 8 car parks, or 50 metres of space. So that's fantastic. I'm not going to go into all the reasons why I've stated already in my written statement, but really that's very important for our well-being, just to have those car parks to be able to service our houses. We already face challenges with driveways and service people not wanting to do jobs because of difficult access and things, and so having those car parks is really important. Also for well-being, in terms of there's a lot of elderly people living in our community, and even though it's small, they need to have services also to their homes. So we really would have appreciated some more time. I'm aware that the standard amount of notification time is 10 days, as I understand it, But I was away and we didn't know anything about this submission, and initially it was to take away all our parking on the street. So that was really stressful to get a sort of call, halfway into the submission time, telling us of something that was going to be so impactful. And the reason why it is so impactful for us is because, we're not connected to a suburb, if you like. We're right on the edge of the town. There aren't other streets where we can park if there is no parking. We're on a hill, so it's very difficult. Friends just aren't going to want to visit if they're going to have to walk a kilometre, find a car park and then walk to you with all their things they're carrying or whatever. So it's just, I think it would be really great if the council could think about the amount of time they give people to respond to these quite impactful situations. The other thing I wanted to mention was that obviously I've already shared my support for the wellbeing strategy of the council, and I just think, everything is connected, and this proposal sequesters off certain aspects of this development and doesn't include others, and so it only includes, for instance, painting of the cycleway lines, and I think some removable plastic. I don't know what they're called. Separators. Yeah. So, and that's all well and good. I understand there are budgetary restrictions, but if the true aim of the wellbeing strategy is to get Wellingtonians moving, then this proposal really needed to include some other things as well, and those are improving the access up to public transport, because there aren't any buses that go along Churchill Drive where we live. We have to go up through Izard Park. The steps are really substandard. They're not lit. They're not very safe. And in winter, you really have to be careful walking up them. And there's been a lovely addition of that little piece of footpath, which is fantastic, which is going in. But we also really need, as Dan said, a pedestrian crossing across there so that residents can walk up to get public transport.
And I'm sorry you have run out of time, but
That's
I'll let you have a little bit extra because you were giving us very valuable feedback.
Yeah,
and thank you for your feedback.
Yeah.
It's really appreciated.
I just wanted to finish by saying we're not there yet. If we had fantastic public transport options, we were more able to move to a completely car-free city, well, that would be fabulous. But we're not quite at that point.
Thank you, thank you. So next up is Ross. Welcome, Ross.
Thank you. My name's Ross Quayle. I live in Wilton. My house overlooks both Wilton Road and Churchill Drive, and I use both roads as a motorist and a cyclist and a pedestrian. I've got some professional background in cost-benefit analysis, and with the proposal before us, I haven't seen anything that I'd consider a proper cost-benefit analysis. What I have seen is a cost-benefit assertion that the largely unsupported claim that the benefits exceed the costs, and maybe a minority view, but I strongly disagree with that. I think the costs exceed the benefits, and to a considerable extent. Because the benefits to cyclists are real, but they're small. There's only a handful of cyclists. The adverse effects for all the other road users are not small. They're considerable, and they have been largely downplayed or ignored completely. It's a main arterial road used by thousands of vehicles, including buses and heavy trucks. I think it's narrow and winding, and making it 1.5 metres narrower will make it hazardous. It will create accidents. It's basically a bad idea. Buses and trucks already mount the footpath when required, and making the road narrow will make this more common. Imagine heavy vehicles meeting on a corner, and that's going to happen regularly. I think head-on collisions are a real risk. So, have I got anything better to suggest? Well, I do have a suggestion. You may think it's radical, but I think in problem solving, you want to include the radical suggestions and make sure you've considered everything. So my suggestion is that you permit cyclists going uphill on Churchill Drive to use a footpath. Now, this will cost almost nothing and will have very few adverse effects. There'll be cyclists who choose this option will have to cross the road twice, but that's their option, and they'll dismount and do that safely. There'll be some cyclist pedestrian interactions, but they can generally be resolved by common courtesy. I think for avoidance of doubt, pedestrians should have the right of way. I've seen shared paths like this working in some cities in Australia, and they seem to work very well. I think, and thinking more generally for a moment, I think the council should, put this on its checklist for any proposal of this type. Consider shared pathways. It's not axiomatic that cycles and scooters and pedestrians are incompatible. I'm finished. Thank you.
Thank you. And we do have a question from Councillor Calvert.
Thank you. Do you think if the council had enabled a more time to work with the people of Wadestown and Wilton, that we may have got a better solution going forward?
Yes, definitely. I felt the process was rushed.
Thank you. Thank you.
Councillor McNulty, do you have a question?
Yeah, I guess shared paths are quite controversial. There's a advocacy group called Living Streets New Zealand that are very much about pedestrian safety, and they hate them. It's probably fair to say they see that pedestrians are at the top of the hierarchy, and that as soon as you introduce any type of wheeled transport, whether it's e-scooters or bikes onto the road, you're creating hazards for pedestrians. So I guess just wondering what your sort of view to that perspective is.
Well, clearly you can't pass laws to make people behave reasonably. You'll always get, I guess you'll get mad teenagers on scooters weeping in and out. But you can, education, the rules should be, dangerous behaviour should not be permitted, and pedestrians should have right of way. I think if that is the emphasis on the publicity and on the rules, then that's manageable. And it is always a matter of compromise, isn't it? You've got to weigh up the effects of one thing, the positive effects and the negative effects, and the effects on other people who aren't your target group.
I was going to ask you a question too. Given that, would you accept that we are trying to encourage cycling and walking in active modes?
Yes.
And even walking to bus stops? How do you see that being compatible with actually trying to get those modes we're trying to encourage to squash into quite a small space to allow motor vehicles to retain their current space?
Well, at the moment, there's a view, I guess, that they're incompatible, but I think that, I question that view. There are options too, like widening of footpaths is an option, marking lanes for pedestrians and cyclists or scooters, is another option. It's not necessarily easy, but I think it hasn't been considered at all in this proposal, as far as I can see, and I think it should have been.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for those views, and I've noted them down, and we've certainly heard them. So thank you very much,
Thanks
Mr. Quayle. Thank you. We'll move now to Emin Sweeney.
I think it's been delayed. It's on its way.
You can choose either stand or sit. It's up to you.
Stand.
Yep,
That's all right.
that's fine.
Thank you. How do I get the slide? Do I just kind of click? Oh, it's all right. It doesn't need to be up straight away, so I'll throw to you when I need it up. How does that sound? Hello, councillors.
Good morning. Welcome.
My name's Eamon Sweeney. I'm responding to TR 11723, which is the changes on Churchill Drive to put in a cycle lane. I would argue that out of all the residents who live on Churchill Drive, our property is the most affected by these changes because we don't have off-street parking. The original consultation that went out said we did. So that was slightly misleading. It was corrected reasonably late in the piece, so that was taken care of. I just wanted to communicate a couple of things. First up, this hasn't been a great experience for the residents of 11 to 21 Churchill Drive, nor the residents on the other side of the road who actually aren't mentioned at all in the consultation from number, I think it's number 4 to number 18. They don't even get a mention about the fact they're losing on-street parking or anything like that. The first indication we got as residents of the street that this was happening was a letter being dropped in our letterbox on the Saturday before consultation started. The letter basically said, "You're losing all your on-street parking," which wasn't a very nice thing to receive on a Saturday morning. I would note that by this stage, residents of Wadestown, who are also having cycle lanes put in a similar traffic resolution going through today, had letters mailed to them in March or April. They'd had walking tours and things like that, so we felt we didn't really get treated with the same equity that they received either. I also note from the agenda documents that were sent out for this meeting that large corporates that are on Churchill Drive, like Bowen Hospital, had direct engagement prior to the consultation. So I would ask that in the future the council does a better job of consulting with affected stakeholders. This was a significant change for us. It still is, still impacts us a lot, even though there have been amendments. So we'd expect better from the council on that. Anyway, we did have someone from the council come and talk to us, and some car parks were reinstated that were not going to be there in the first place. I thought what I might, if it's okay, I thought I might give you an idea of what the impact would have been on us if the car parks weren't reinstated, just in case you were thinking of not letting us reinstate them. So this is a map of Churchill Drive. Please pardon my drawing skills. The red areas are places where, under the original proposal, you would not be able to park a car on the road anymore. The blue areas are where you can park a car currently. That's Wilton Road and Blackbridge Road. But they will also be getting a cycle lane soon as well, so there'll be reduced parking there. So it's approximately 300 metres from the top of our shared driveway to the closest place that you would be able to park a car, except for a piece of road reserve that you can squeeze 2 cars onto at the top of the shared driveway. And obviously there's cars already parked in the places where you'd be going to move your car to. So it's quite far away from where we live. And it's, as mentioned in the consultation documents, quite a steep hill. To give you a sense of how far that is in some other places in Wellington, and this is quite fun putting this together, here is a map of, where is that? Oh, my eyesight's quite bad. Mount Victoria. So say I lived on the corner of Elizabeth Street and Brougham Street, right in the middle. The red lines indicate how far away would be the closest parking available to my house under the original proposal. Also, the closest public transport, I should probably add as well, is 300 metres away. Here's another example from Karori. So if I lived on the corner of Campbell Street and Karori Road, the closest parking would either be up past Karori Normal School or down past the petrol station on the main road there, even down past the BP, I think it is, on the other side. In all directions, same again. If we have a go in Kilburnie, you really can't get very close to your house with a vehicle for any residents, for any visitors, for any tradies, anything like that. Here again, in Newtown, you can't park very close as well. And here is also what would happen if everyone who came here today had to drive for some reason or wanted to catch public transport. That is the closest they would be able to have parked or caught public transport based on the original consultation document that was proposed. I'm showing this to you to indicate that the original proposal was quite unreasonable in my opinion. I don't know what you think of that, but I wouldn't think many residents or anyone who lives in a property would think that's okay to expect someone to have to park that far away from their house or have visitors, elderly, people with children.
Evan, I'm sorry, but we will need to ask you just to make the final comments.
Okay. Basically, as far as assessing these things in the future, I think the council needs to do a better job of figuring out what's reasonable as far as how close people need to park to their houses, because clearly this, as it was first proposed, isn't. So thank you for your time.
And thank you for that feedback. I've noted it, and yeah, I'm pleased we've managed to find a bit of a solution anyway. So next up, please, is Wayne Sampson.
Yeah, I'm Wayne Sampson.
Good morning, Wayne.
Morning. I'm really just going to, I cut back my submission quite a bit, and there was a lot of angst that I took out of it. My main complaint really is what were people thinking when they dropped this letter in our letterbox to tell us that they were taking away our parking? Seriously, it created an enormous amount of angst amongst our community. It seems that there was little thought or research actually that went into what the implications were. Certainly with Eamon, no parking whatsoever. He's got a child on the way. His first reaction was, I'm going to have to move. This, on the one hand, it was either a lack of research or it was disingenuous to suggest that this was just a parking resolution with minor implications. The implications were significant for a lot of people. How could people come and visit us? How could our tradies? I mean, what builder is going to walk 300 or 400 metres from his toolbox to come and fix my house? They wouldn't do it. So there were major implications, and to flick it through with 10 days' notice was just over the top. You need to think carefully about the implications of dropping something like this in somebody's letterbox on a weekend. Look, in fact, council's been fantastic. Jonathan here came up and we had a meeting. It was recognised that it was an oversight, and we've got some parking. Possibly. It's not set in stone. And I see from the comments from the council back to officers, back to people who've submitted, this is just the beginning, and in the next 5 to 10 years you're wanting to embed other things. Are we going to lose this parking? The implications for us are huge, not just in terms of well-being and house maintenance and stuff, but I mean, I'm a real estate agent, put my hand up, admit it. The implications for loss of property values, people might say, I love your house, but I'm not going to have my grandmother walk 300 or 400 metres to come and see us. It wouldn't happen. So, yeah, we were pretty upset by that. But getting the parking back, that's fantastic. But I was also looking at Ross's submission, the shared pathway, footpath, would be a great idea. It wouldn't cost that much money. I mean, really, very few people walk down that footpath, as very few people cycle it. Okay, cycling's going to increase. Applaud that. I'm a cyclist too. But that could easily be a shared pathway, and next time they come to do the roadside curbing replacement, perhaps you could make it a little wider, narrow the road a little bit, and it would be perfectly adequate for both users. That's pretty much what I wanted to say. But seriously, the biggest impact was, I mean, this caused enormous strain for some people, and I'm not going to say who they were, but, guys, you've got to think about what it is, what you're doing. This was inadequately researched, and it certainly wasn't a minor thing. It was a major impact. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and we do have some questions if you just want to stay a little bit. Councillor McNulty.
Like, it's not a question, I'm going to be cheeky. I just want to apologise for what you've come through. The message you guys are giving us today is really loud and clear, and will be in the next stage when we start to discuss this traffic resolution, asking officers what will change in future, because it's clearly yeah, as you've highlighted, not good enough.
Could I add a little bit too about the Izard Izard Park thing? That is quite significant. I mean, at the moment, you're popping out of there. There's an encouragement for using Otari and making it very, very smart, but it is very dangerous to cross there. And if we could possibly get a pedestrian crossing there, that would be fantastic. My wife picks up a grandson from school. They won't cross that road there. They go right round the long way to come down. It would be fantastic to get a crossing there. I mean, I get across, but I have to look and run. So, you know, I think you could, if in the future, if you could look to do that, that would be fantastic.
Can I just clarify? I'm not familiar with the area. Where are you thinking there should be a crossing?
From the exit from Izard Park onto Churchill Drive, I mean, you really pop out of the bush there. Thankfully, when Jonathan looked at it, you're going to give us a bit of asphalt there to make it more like a footpath, but crossing that road is still quite perilous. So if we had a speed bump either side, it would slow traffic coming down the hill as well, but it would be a hell of a lot safer. And really, you're trying to encourage people to come into that entrance at Otari. You're actually, you know, it's not if, it's when somebody's going to get hit.
And is this the same issue that, sorry, we are going a bit over time, but is this the same issue that another submitter's just mentioned about catching the bus as well? Like
yes,
the
exactly.
connectivity to the bus?
Yeah, that's the best route to go up to the bus. But, you know, people who are cautious, and I don't blame them, have to walk up the hill, round the corner, probably 5 times as long.
Okay, thank you. We'll definitely be asking officers for some more advice on that.
Right,
Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks.
And thank you for your submission. Right, can I please now invite, I think we're up to John. Welcome, John. I don't have a surname for you.
I don't have my surname.
Sorry about that.
Morena, everybody. And
what is your surname?
So my full name is John Matthew von den Heuvel.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah. Okay, and just thank you all for this opportunity to address you. I do appreciate it. Appreciate the consultation in the process. Although not perfect, I appreciate what's gone on so far, including the hour-long meeting we had with Jonathan on the corner of Park Street and Grant Road that freezing cold evening. So I live at 105 Grant Road with my family. It's a substantial original family home. And we're all in favour of the cycle way, and and we're looking to make sure it's a win-win. We've already appreciate that the feedback we've provided, and it's in relation to the 6 residence parks that are going to be removed from outside our address from the corner of Park Street to our place, 105 Grant Road. We've already been heard on that, and the council have reacted, because what we're basically saying is remove 6, give back 6, and then everybody is happy. So on paper, the removing the 6 parks between 95 and 109 Grant Road is what I want to talk about, and that's references page 7 in your plan. And we're really grateful that one of our that a mobility park is going to be provided there, which is not for us in our household, but our neighbours are elderly, and that is really important to them. So very much appreciate that. Pretty much, the other part of the solution in page 9 of your plan is to convert 3 coupon parking spaces to residents, and they're outside numbers 115 to 117. Our point there is that's a little bit of false accounting, because those parks, we've been in the street 7 years now in Grant Road, they are permanently occupied by residents, permitted parks any case. So the converting those coupon parks to residence parks looks fine, but in actual fact it's a net loss to us, because they're on the house side of the street, not the hillside, and they are pretty much permanently occupied by residents. We do appreciate on the other side of the road, I get confused whether it's north, south, east or west, but the hillside, if you like, near the intersection of Waystown Road, there has been allocated 11.6 metres converting coupon parking to residence parking. So that's pretty much two parks. We just think that's a bit stingy, a bit tight. We'd like you to consider providing an extra couple of parks there for residents. So I don't want to bang on. I can tell you all about the homes, but pretty much we'd just like you to prioritise residents, rate-paying residents who are committed to the cycleway and to the city over the commuters who have alternatives to their journey in and out from work, and we don't. We need our, as an example, there are 7 licensed drivers in my household. I have a house and a flat below it. We have 2 residence car parks. We have a car pad, granted, but we also, that's for one vehicle. It's simply just not enough for these substantial homes. So the closer we can park to our home, the closer my daughter can park. She's a teenage daughter. The street's a bit crooked at times. There's people that live in that hill. You'll be all aware of that in the summer. We've been burgled twice in 7 years. The house down the road was burgled just last month while the occupants were home. So there is that sense of being able to park closer to our homes gives us, one, it does make us safer, but it also, most importantly, makes us feel safer. So that's it, really, if you can have a look at that.
Thank you very much, John. And can I just ask for some clarification? So those 2 parks that you mentioned on the uphill side, and you wondered whether there could be more, could you just clarify again that address, if you can?
So the removal of 6 parks, we've got 1 mobility park to replace 6, and then further up the street, outside number 115 and 117, I think Jonathan would be able to help us out.
I think that's what you did say.
They're coupon parks, and the plan is to turn them to residence parking, but in effect they are already residence parks.
I understand that you said that. It was then the next point that you made was something about the uphills.
So on the other side of Grant Road is coupon parking, and the intention is to turn the parks closest to the intersection of Wadestown Road to residence parks, and it's 11.6 metres of parking for residents. I'm asking you to consider extending that, please.
Oh, okay. So it's existing car parks which are currently coupon, but you would like more of them to be transferred into residents, and we can certainly ask for some advice on that.
So far, I think 11.6 would be
I don't know.
2 parks.
Yeah, something like that.
We'd like 4, please.
Okay.
Then we're all happy.
We can certainly get some advice. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Right, so if Colette McKenzie is here, welcome, Colette.
Can I hand out her?
Yes.
Thank you. Might need to share. I don't think I did enough.
Thank you.
Thanks. Kia ora koutou katoa, thank you for today. I'm right out of my comfort zone being here. I'm here to plead for the retaining of the car park outside our house. I've been in contact with Evandro, and he sent me this most recently, which is why I don't think it's with the submission, showing that if you see on the original one that came, the yellow lines go right to the edge of our driveway, which completely takes away that parking area in front of our house. What he's explained there with the 6 metres coming to that hedge and the having to be a metre from our park, that prolongation line that comes out, that would only leave enough room for a small car, 4.5 metres long. And so if you just see the little notes I've put there, my leaf is 4.44, it's smaller. My daughter's Qashqai, who's about to have a baby and will be calling on us is 4.39. My friend's Honda is 3.99. My ex-ASX and my nephew's ASX is 4.36. All of those cars are less than 4.5. The only problem I would have if my brother drove his Lincoln Continental down from Auckland, which is apparently 6 metres long, but he said he doesn't own an oil refinery, so he won't be doing that. Please, could we stop those yellow lines? Where they currently stop is a white line, which would just keep that space there for me. My husband has advanced dementia, needs to be dropped off outside our house. The house opposite is a rental, and those people have 5 cars, so there is absolutely nowhere else to park. You'll see the bus route doesn't come past our house. It's a very busy road, I agree, up there, but very few cars come up our road, up past us. It's not busy. Please, could those yellow lines stop where they do now?
Thank you. Thank you for that. And I must admit, I personally had a bit of sympathy because my car is smaller than that too.
Thank you.
But I don't know if there are any questions from the committee. I think your case is very clear.
Thank you.
And we've understood what you're asking, so we'll see where we land with that.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay,
Thanks
thank
for your
you.
time.
All righty. So we have now Patrick Morgan from Cycle Wellington. Thank you, Patrick. We probably can allow you a little extra time over and above the 5 minutes because we're running a tiny bit ahead of schedule, I think. Oh, no, we are just about on schedule, but
Okay, kia ora, councillors.
we probably can allow you 10.
Thanks, Sarah. So I'm Patrick Morgan from Cycle Wellington. This is Andrew Jacobs. I'll just introduce our submission and Andrew will go into more of the detail. Today's about leadership. This is about keeping going and doing what you said you'd do. So you've committed to building Pāniki Poniki, a connected network of bike lanes throughout Wellington. Every time the plans get chipped away, small concessions here and there, you really undermine the purpose of the plan. So we're really keen to make sure that as much of the plan is delivered as possible. And I know your staff have worked hard to meet legitimate concerns from residents. Yeah, I don't want to pitch this as parking versus cycling because I think it's not a positive way to frame this. But I'd remind you that this is really about the safety of people on our streets. I believe it's the council's job. A very basic job of the council is to provide streets that are fit for purpose, that protect people as they get around. Southern and eastern suburbs have had a lot of bike love in recent years. Suburbs like Wadestown have really missed out. We can change that starting today. That's what this plan is about. You could say that very few people cycle in these suburbs, therefore we shouldn't do anything. Or you could say very few people cycle in these suburbs, therefore we need to fix that. The difference here is leadership, and that's your job today. Yeah, this week I spoke to the family members of Ben Lawless, who sadly was killed in Kurori just a few years ago on a place with no bike lanes. So it really brought home to me again that this is about basic safety. That's the value that we're working towards today. So, you know, my main point here is we enthusiastically support these plans. Don't get us wrong. We love them, please do it. There's things we think you could do even better. And I'll turn to Andrew now to address that.
Yeah, hi, kia ora, I'm Andrew. To talk to some of the amendments that are in the papers from officers' amendments, I think that retaining parking on Churchill Drive it seems like that's been agreed to by officers. I just want to recognise and put up front that will make cycling that route less appealing to particularly less experienced cyclists. It will make it objectively more dangerous, and that's the trade-off that you're making. For more experienced cyclists, I will put myself in that category, you'll be happy to take the lane. People who would already be comfortable cycling will continue to cycle along there, but I think it will diminish the uptake of more people who are likely to start. And that's really what this whole project is about. And so changes like that, change is really hard, and like I genuinely sympathise with what we've heard from the people, from the residents on there. I think if there is a change that you're going to make, I do so being aware of the impact that it'll have on diminishing the benefits that you'll get from this project, and if possible, see it as a first stage to signal that this is not being kept forever. This will change over time. People will need to adapt, particularly on an arterial road like this. But this is, for now, we can do this. On Grant Road, I think I'm personally extremely sympathetic to the retention of a mobility park. I've had experience earlier this year with my sister who had cancer, who's supporting her to get around in a wheelchair, and so I'm very familiar with how immiserating that is and how difficult getting around with mobility issues can be. Looking at the plans, I think that there is, and I can go through this with officers or any councillors, I've got them on my screen if you'd like. I think that there's a possibility to just shift it up the road slightly. I think it will be about 40 to 50 metres, and then prioritising renewal of the footpath surface to make that a good quality surface. I'm just looking at Street View, it looks like that probably curb and channel hasn't been done for many years. So I think that that could be retaining that mobility access in a way that would allow the cycleway to stay on that road. The geometry's not straightforward, but I think it should be possible to retain the residence parking, provide mobility parking for people with accessibility needs, and also retain that cycleway. I think if that weren't the case, from just looking at what officers are suggesting here, there would be a really big gap there. That would essentially be you can't, it just drops off. There's a little bit coming up through Thorndon, there's a bit going up the hill, and there's just a gap. I've got a really good friend with her daughter who's 12 who live in Wadestown. I visit quite a lot, so I'm familiar with this area. She's going to be starting at Wellington Girls College next year. I would love for her to be able to cycle to school. That's the road that she'd go on. I'm not sure that this plan really actually goes far enough to enable her to do that, or to enable other people in that situation to do that. It's good, you should support it, but it's really, to be honest, it's a lot less than it needs to be. We had the privilege of having Claire come and speak to Cycle Wellington meeting last month. She talked us through the presentation on the Bloomberg grant before coming to then give that to you. I think it was the following day. And for me, that was just an incredibly inspirational presentation. And I didn't take notes there, but I rewatched the video earlier because I wanted to find some quotes from Claire. One of them from one of the slides was that the time from incremental change is over, and I could not agree with that more. And there was a particular quote that if we get bound by thinking about tweaking the situation of today, we won't be able to get to that really different future state. And for me, I think that's how you should see this project. We went in our written submission into a lot more detail on some ways that this could be made better over time, particularly Churchill Drive, where with the countdown, there's nothing changing. That's a miserable road to cycle on. I've had a number of really near misses on that road. This does nothing for that. That's going to be, if you're in Wadestown and you want to go to the nearest supermarket, that's that countdown. So if you want to try to be encouraging cycling for ordinary day-to-day trips, you're just leaving out the bit by the nearest supermarket. You're leaving out the bit by the Crofton Downs railway station. There is so much more that could be done and needs to be done on this route. Yeah, I think that's all I've got. Welcome any questions you have.
Questions? Do we have any? Yes, Councillor Paul.
Thanks for your submission this morning. I'm not quite sure how to frame this, but so the big thing that I kind of took away from what you've just shared with us is that, you know, don't make concessions or just be aware of the concessions that you make. But don't you think a real strength of our approach that we're taking is a tactical urbanism approach, and this is like a transitionary kind of project and we can embed, more permanent safety kind of measurements when we put the permanent solution in a bit later? And isn't it important that this is like a adapting thing where people can have their feedback and we can make concessions to fit to the particular context of each cycleway?
Sure, thank you for the question. We do like the transitional approach. It's delivering much more infrastructure sooner and at lower cost. I think it's a good approach. Just to be clear, this is like the bare minimum of a network that Wellington needs. So to see chunks of it left out, like on Churchill Drive by Countdown, is really disappointing to us. We don't see that as a concession. We see that as a gap in the network. So every time, a bit gets chipped out here and there, it just degrades the whole network. And, I heard the submissions earlier, and I checked them, and I can see it's not private parking on people's properties that's affected. That's unaffected, this plan. This is potential parking for visitors and tradies that may want to come. So, I just invite you to weigh up the safety of people on bikes against the convenience of people who might want to park there from time to time. Thank you.
Do we have any further questions? We do. Councillor McNulty.
Incredibly quickly, if there was a change of government and we lost our Waka Kotahi co-funding in 30 seconds, do you have a recommended approach of how you would like to see us proceed with the network if we were unable to fund it entirely? 20 seconds.
Yeah, I don't think, we don't know what the vote's going to be, so it's too soon to say on that. I don't think it's a question we can fairly answer in 20 seconds, Ben. One thing I would add on footpaths is we reject putting people on bikes on footpaths. That's not the solution for Wellington. We agree with Living Streets on that. Footpaths are primarily for people on foot and mobility devices, so don't be tempted to think that as a cheap solution. It's not the way forward.
Very, very quickly.
Sorry, if I could just add a little bit to that. This might be something that you want to seek advice on officers from, but as far as I'm aware, you have fully funded and allocated funding through the long-term plan for Panekiponiki, that the 90% or whatever the funding rate that you're getting from the Climate Emergency Response Funds through Waka Kotahi is an addition, and is essentially additional money coming into council that will mean that you will not have to spend money that you've allocated through the long-term plan. That's my understanding of where the finances are at. So if there is a change in government and you lose that co-funding from Waka Kotahi, you would just be back to where you were planning to be with the allocation of funding that you had from the long-term plan.
Oh, thank you for that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yes, I would encourage you to seek advice from officers. That's my understanding, though. Okay.
Anyway,
thank you.
But yes.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Right, so we have Patricia Fraser, and I think, is there one other after that?
So we have Flora
and then Flora and Alberto. So Patricia, welcome.
Thank you. I want to start by saying that I and others, including a number who've spoken here, most who've spoken here actually, support the cycleway networks, including in our own area, but have concerns. And you've heard some of those concerns about the angst that people have felt and locally are still feeling, about the very short notice or the lack of notice, about changes that were proposed, and also the failure for many people, or most people actually in our area who will be affected, to actually have to even know what is about to happen. And I'm not criticising Jonathan in any way. He's been great, but it seems this project has been pushed through with too short a time frame, and an emphasis on reducing costs as much as possible. So where I live, on Wadestown Road, not far from Wadestown Village, car parks are regularly at a premium. There's the church with its services and other events. There's a community centre just around the corner. Our steep hills mean many locals need to travel by car, including those who come from further away, of course. Those who are frail, with young children, with health conditions. Lack of parking restricts their ability to participate in society, and lack of parks will affect many who live near Wadestown Village when a significant number of parks disappear. There seems to be no, I know we're told this will be dealt with next year, but there will be discussion, but there seems to be little possibility of replacing those parks. On page 32 of the document I received last Tuesday, I was away for 5 days following that, so that is the time frame I've had to look at this. I read to you. We are aware that most of the houses on Wadestown Road between numbers 67 and 77 do not have off-street parking. In fact, there is no off-street parking for any house from number 65 to 77. Most of those houses have no space where they can put anything. They have to walk it up steep path and or steps to their houses, quite a distance. These are family homes, some of them, and some are rentals with flats. The only, the area around us is used to some extent by people who either walk or bus down to town for their jobs. The people who do that further down the hill are losing all their parks. There's a huge loss of parks when we look at the activities that mean people do come and park. I have one request, which is that car park, car parks that have been removed. Just if you look at page at 17, you'll see just after Roscoe Terrace, there are 2 cars parked there where there's a speed bump. I think one of those car parks could be retained with people slowing down with the speed bump and then 25k sign. I think it would be possible, quite safe. The road is wider there. Mostly our road's very narrow. We're not, I don't think anyone is asking for any changes to the other car parking. So we do, but I just note that all those car parks on that downhill side are currently used by locals, not only the people on Wadestown Road, particularly actually when you go the other side towards the village, they're used by people from nearby streets who don't have adequate parking or can't park safely. Well, people do think about cyclists, actually, when they're concerned about safety. It's not only that they want to look after their own car. And that's the other thing I want to say. I feel...
Patricia, I will need to ask you to just make your final comments.
Right. I think we should have a more consultative approach, allowing time. And I'm quite offended by a couple of the comments made by Cycle Wellington, such that retaining vehicle parking on our stretch of road, where there is no off-street parking, no space for most people. The 2 garages there cannot be used for safety reasons and because they're too small.
Okay.
Saying it's not good enough and not a sufficient level of service just takes no account of the lives of the people who live there.
Okay. Thank you. I'm sorry to have to cut you short, but thank you for that, and you've made your point very clear. Thank you. Our final submitter is Flora in Alberto, so apologies again, I don't have a surname. welcome. You're welcome to either sit or stand, whatever feels more comfortable. And if you push the button to just activate the microphone, that's so people online can hear. Thank you.
Hello, good morning. Thank you for, being able to come here and express our views on the submission that we've received lately. We are, Flora and myself lived in 111 Kanpur Road in Broadmeadows. And the submission that we got is that we're losing a car park because of the bus stop right in front of our section. Now the suggestion that we have that we came up is it possible to rethink that bus stop in front of our section be removed because of the danger? Because of the situation we have at the junction, wherein bus coming in and going out on that particular intersection is quite hazardous, actually. It's an accident waiting to happen. That's what I could see. Now, because we're losing a car park right in front of our section, now we have an elderly mother living with us. She's 91, and we are also on our age, so we're in the 70s, both of us. And we work from home. And we have visitors or client coming to do business with us. And if we're losing that car park, then we lose business as well. Now, the main point that I have, because Broadmeadows is such a small subdivision, we've never seen a number of bus stops in that area, actually. So if we could reduce the number of bus stops, then we could encourage people to just walk a few meters to where the bus stops are. Then we could, we could encourage them to.
Yeah, I think we just agree with a lot of the comments that have been made previous to us in terms of thought that's been put into the number of car parks that are being lost within our area. The thing too is that when we lose our car park, it affects not just us, but our neighbors, because we're having to take over some of their car park. And we are actually surrounded by a lot of families with little children who are below school age. The ones next door, 109, and the people across the road from us. And as Alberta has already said about losing car park, our elderly mother actually needs care from outside as well. So we expect a lot of people to support us. And she walks around with a Zimmer frame. And for us, losing a car park means we have to park further up the road. And it means then for her, it is difficult to sort of maneuver back. So I guess it's more to do with considering how the area is actually being considered for parking. I think we're not asking for a lot. Just consider how that's being addressed.
Thank you, Flora. We just have time for one quick question from Councillor Kelly. Oh, Pauiwi Kelly, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm looking on Google Maps at where your house is, and I don't quite understand what you're saying, because it appears to me that you have a driveway and a garage, so you have off-street parking. So it doesn't really...
The lines that are being proposed actually takes all the way up to 109 the Terrace.
But
109 Campo Road. So that's being proposed is that they're taking away all the parking available for 111 Campo Road.
So are you 111?
We are 111
Okay, okay, so but you have
a double garage.
A double garage and off-street parking.
At the moment, yes.
Yeah. So is your submission about the impact it will have on you?
Yes, correct.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you very much for that. Thanks for clarifying that, and thank you for your submission. But we are out of time. Right. Okay, we will move straight into our first couple of papers, which are the, I think I've actually asked Councillor Nuridan to bring the proposed road, officers. We're jumping the gun. Oh, yes.
Okay, just introducing road closures. This is for road closures for 5 events that are very popular sporting and community events, much loved by Wellingtonians. Any questions? We have Sean and Maria here to answer them.
Does anyone have any questions? The paper did seem extraordinarily clear, and there were no objections to anything.
Nothing.
So really, yes, I think I just want to say really good work. Thank you for going through the process to actually bring these to the community, put it out for consultation, and then bringing it to us in such a thorough way. Thank you. I will ask Councillor Abdurrahman just to move the paper. He moves it. Do we have a seconder? We have a seconder. Shall we vote? On everything, I think. Nobody wants anything taken separately. I see people have voted already. And that's carried. Thank you again, and we look forward to lots of events over summer, and I'm sure the Wellingtonians do as well. Thank you. Right, so we will move to the next paper, which is about the leases, and invite our officers to come and just introduce that paper.
Kia ora koutou. So this paper is seeking for the committee to approve a new ground lease on reserve land at Capital BMX at Ian Galloway Park for the term of 2 + 3 years. It's also seeking to approve a new licence on reserve land for the Wellington Beekeepers Association on Chartwell Reserve for a term of 5 + 5. And it's also seeking to agree that officers commence public consultation for a premises lease on Wellington Town Belt land. That's for the Port Nicholson and Pornicky Cycling Club at the Velodrome at Hātepe Park for a term of 10 + 10. I do want to note that all these groups are already using these spaces, and Parish has been working with them over the past year to come up with these lease proposals. We're both happy to take any questions.
My only real question was I just noticed there's a different process for the PMP application. Is that partly to do with the Town Belt Act? It seems that there's just you have to bring back the results of the consultation to us, whereas the others we delegate to you to make a decision based on what the feedback you get.
Yes, yep, correct. So we are asking to commence public consultation, and then we'll report back to regulatory committee. But we do need full council approval for the final deed.
Okay. Apart from that, we'll now move. Are there any other questions? Yep. Councillor Calvert.
Thank you. Just on the BMX track for Ian Galloway Park, can you give us an update with the toilets? Because we were putting toilets at the end of that location.
Yes, so the toilets are expected to be completed this financial year at Ian Galloway Park.
Yeah, so I know there, but when have you got an approximate date, or maybe you could come back to us? It's probably not, so this is not, it's not being delayed in any way for.
So they've just gone through procurement at the stage, looking at construction to start in February, and for it to be completed just before the financial year.
And just on the term of the, it's only 2 + 3 years for the capital BMX as opposed to a sort of 10-year. And I do know they seem to maintain that area really well and do a lot of volunteer effort. So can you just reiterate why you're going for just 2 + 3?
Yeah, definitely. The committee is quite engaged and do a really good job of maintaining that track. So it's not necessarily that concern. It's more around the sustainability of the track and the model that it currently runs under. It's quite a high maintenance or high level of maintenance track. And high cost as well. So we've provided them some funding for the next couple years, and we're going to work with them to try to figure out what's the most sustainable model. It does put a lot of pressure on their governance and their committee in terms of trying to lock down grant funding, and that's their kind of main source of income. They have lower memberships too, which is a bit on the concerning side, but we feel comfortable that we'll kind of find a nice balance where it's a shared space with the community and the club still maintaining it to a high level.
And so, because this is all part of the whole Ian Galloway Park, and there's a master plan being planned to plan the master plan. So is that going to enable that information to feed into the sort of longer term view of Ian Galloway Park, how it's used, where things are placed?
Yes, correct. So,
and so that will be done well before their terms expire, or before the next round of leases have to come back up again.
yeah, so the Ian Galloway Park master plan will just be a master plan, and we'll recommend based on that on any existing leases or premises on that site around sort of the timing of any changes that will be proposed. So yeah, we'll be working with all the clubs.
So when do you expect that master plan to be completed by?
Councillor, I think we are getting a little bit away from the actual core business we're dealing with.
No, it's not, because it's all relevant to the length of the lease.
Okay.
And so, and this sits on the southern end of Ian Galloway Park. So it's really important that if we're going to give them a lease, that we understand partly, I'm just trying to understand, because we are not giving them a 10-year lease, we're giving them a 2 + 3 or 3 + 2, I don't remember now exactly. But that's why I'm asking that question.
Okay, fair enough. Pawiwi, Kelly.
Just for clarity, and correct me if I'm wrong, but in our papers, it seems to me that the reason why this is happening is because of the current allocation of funding that they've been given, 100,000, but it's been drip-fed over the 3 years. So it's taking into account the fact that they have high maintenance on the cycleway, and it's ensuring that they have money to upgrade the track. So is that right? So that's what I understood in the
yes,
paper.
Correct.
Was the reason why you had made the lease 3 + 2 to enable
2 + 3. So they've got remaining 2 more years on of their funding, and then we have put 3 years in there to be able to understand what sort of the implications of that funding has sort of has produced for them to be able
and to enable them, I guess, to be able to look for more funding. Realistically, I'm on the right track. Yeah, kapa.
Correct. Yes.
Are there any further questions? Yes, Councillor Abdurrahman.
Kia ora whanau. My question would be regards to how many people are a member and using currently for each of those leases.
Yep. So with Capital BMX, they have roughly around 35 paid memberships. I think they might have had a few more since we put the paper up. That is quite low in terms of membership for like for our normal kind of formal clubs, but it's a shared model with the public can use that space too. So we feel a little bit more comfortable having a little bit less memberships there. The beekeeping has I think around 290 memberships, so they're quite high in terms of engagement. And then the cycling club has, I believe it's around 65 memberships.
The cycling club and the bookkeeping, they exclusively used it or inclusive of others?
Yep, so they work quite closely with some other cycling organizations, Word Cycling and Trails Wellington, and they've already engaged with utilizing that clubroom space. It is a bit of a challenging space in terms of size, so it's attached to the change rooms and the toilet, so it's quite small, and it's a little bit challenging to have more specialized kind of requirements for the space.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions? Okay, thank you very much. We appreciate it, all the work you do. Councillor Calvert, you. Thank you.
Let's get my pen.
We're just waiting for that. Do you have?
Just because it's scrolling ahead. Look, yeah, I'm happy to move these recommendations. Just to point out that I asked specifically about the questions about the Capital BMX Club because we are putting toilets in around that area, and it's also adjacent to a skate park and the dog park area. So it's an area generally very well used. We do need to look at that master plan and just make sure where things are going to be placed in the very long term, and making sure that we can support these type of facilities in this part of the city, because in this part of the city we don't have these facilities such as a well-fenced dog park, a skate park, and a BMX track. So we need to make sure, and we've also seen, and I've been down myself and seen, it's not, it's supporting young people, and not just boys, but also girls are very active in the sport as well. So I think we need to approve it. Would have liked a slightly longer lease, but that's okay, because I don't see us applying the same principles to some of the other leases we give in terms of funding around, making sure there's a funding, but having said that. So I ask you to support the recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. And does anyone, it looks like you're keen to second. Do you wish to speak now? Or speak at all?
Just briefly, I guess. I just would like to say that I'm going to support this, and I would like to also acknowledge the work that the officers have done in taking a common sense approach to the recommendation. I don't have the same concerns as Councillor Colvert, because I do believe that that this is a good move, and the mahi that we're doing and putting the toilets in, that's well needed facility, and that will be there for everyone. But I also wanted to just commend the officers as well on the leases for the Beekeepers Association. I think that's pretty awesome, that one. So yeah, ka pai.
Is there any further debate? Right of reply?
No.
No, not needed. Okay, let's go to the vote. It's carried. Now we're just a little bit behind where I thought we might be, but I think we do need a reasonable break, because there's things that I think we want to talk to our officers about. So I'm actually going to suggest 10 past 11, and yeah, and we'll hopefully get back into it then. Thank you, and thank you to the public. You're very welcome to remain, or and there is some morning tea, and we always invite whoever's in the room to partake. So please feel free to have a drink and something to eat. finish and have lunch at a reasonably lunchy time, I think we probably better get back into it. So if I could just, I think we have got everyone, haven't we? 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you, and welcome everyone back to the table. I'm going to hand over now to Claire and Jonathan to introduce the first of our main cycling papers. And we'll deal with the traffic resolution, the rest of the traffic resolutions separately after these two papers. Thank you, Claire.
Kia ora koutou, kai konihira. So these are the next two sections of the Wellington Bike Network, Pāniki Pōneke. They're part of the transitional rollout, so that accelerated rollout that were to be delivered within 3 years. So we're down to about 7 months left, and we're still going. So the first one, Churchill Drive, if you don't know the area, this is in the Wadestown, Wilton, Crofton Downs area, and the extent of this one is from the Crofton Downs railway station up the hill, past Bowen Hospital, down the hill, past the Otari Wilton Reserve entrance, and up the hill again to Wilton Road. So this is quite a hilly area. There's quite a lot of speed differentials on the uphills between people on bikes and the thousands of cars that travel along here every day, which is why we are looking to get these separated facilities in. This project was added to the scope of Wadestown Connections because it connected the area to some key destinations like the supermarket and the railway station. So that's why it was added in. There was a lot of discussion today in the orals, and we heard it in the consultation about the process, so I just wanted to spend a minute touching on the process. So when we come to assess how we're going to engage on these projects, we use the Council's significance and engagement policy, and that is a useful guide because not all projects are equal. They have different impacts, different extents, and we need to make sure we're having a proportionate response to a project. So when we looked through the criteria for the policy for this one, we assessed it to be low, similar to the way that we assessed those secondary connections for the Korori projects that came to you last RPC meeting. So that criteria covers things like the level of importance to Wellington City, the level of community interest, the consistency of the proposed decision with the existing policy and strategy, and the impact on the Council's capacity and capability. So because these projects, this one in particular, affected a small, and compared with most things we're doing, a very small number of individuals, because it was a logical next step from a decision that you've already made, because we were able to reverse it, and because in terms of car park removal, this was a low level of car parks removal, that's what led us to assessing this as a low impact. And so we followed a process which is similar to the way Evandro and their team consult on their traffic resolutions, which is a letter drop in advance, a 14-day period where people can contact us, and we heard right away from these residents. Jonathan was on the phone to them within a couple of days and had that site visit booked. We got feedback that was able to be made quickly because we were looking at a really local, very short section of the route that we were getting feedback on, and we were able to make an amendment within hours, really, for this project. So I guess we feel like the process was proportionate to the scale of the project, but we acknowledge that the members of the community in this area didn't feel like that. Also want to apologise for the sort of stress that it has created. So I'll leave Jonathan to talk about the design, but I just wanted to mention that this one and the one that we'll talk about next are part of this Wadestown Connections. The reason that we are not bringing the middle section to you today is that has a higher impact. It involves more parking removal in trickier areas, and we need to consult on that one in a different way alongside an area-wide parking management plan for Wadestown. So that's why they're coming to you separately. We are able to do these ones, however, more quickly, and we can attract that national 90% SURF funding on them if we can deliver them by June, which we think we can, which is why we're, I guess, motivated to try and get these benefits sooner. So I'll hand over to Jonathan to talk a little bit about some of the designs and the amendments that came through from feedback.
Thank you, Claire. So the Churchill Drive is 1.6 kilometres long, and essentially it is an inverted hill. So from one end of Churchill Drive, you go down to Blackbridge Road, and then you climb up out of Blackbridge Road. And so the proposal is to install a cycle way from Blackbridge Road up in both directions, going uphill on the side of Churchill Drive. To do this, the centre line has to be moved over in places, and to make it safe, broken yellow lines need to be installed. The section that has been talked about that goes from Chartwell Drive towards Crofton Downs Railway Station, which goes past a large supermarket, and Mitre 10, which is a very busy hardware store. That section is not having an uphill cycleway installed at this stage because it's a high volume road with 2 right turn traffic lanes, and there isn't enough road width to install an uphill cycleway without removing those right turn bays, and they're very, very busy. So there's a risk that if we don't get that one right, that there could be some traffic collisions. So that can be looked at again in the future, but at this stage we haven't found a good solution there. The section that's been talked about by several of the submitters today, which is a section of 6 houses that are accessed via a sort of a driveway heading off Churchill Drive near the Wilton end. That section there are 6 houses. 5 of them have off-street parking, and 1 of them does not. There are 2 parking spaces that are not private parking spaces on road reserve at the start of the driveway, but of course anybody can get those. They're not sort of allocated to the one house that doesn't have off-street parking. We heard from one of the people who lives at that house during the consultation, and so I contacted him straight away by email, and then we had a phone call, a couple more emails, set up a meeting, and quite a few of the people who live in that group of houses came to the meeting, and I went there with the designer because I knew that we were likely to make an amendment as a result of that meeting, and with the designer and the residents, we marked up with chalk where it would be safe to remove some broken yellow lines, and we felt that due to the curvature of the road, it was possible to mark up 8 car parks. So the car parking survey that we had done showed that there were 2 to 3 cars parking there sort of regularly, and we, through the amendment that we've put into the paper, have removed 8 car parks worth of broken yellow lines. The other issue that was raised at that meeting, which we hadn't heard of before, was that some of the residents weren't happy with crossing the road where the Izzard Park track comes out because it's close to a corner. And they suggested having a footpath coming up from where the Izzard Park track meets Churchill Drive, coming up the road towards where their houses are, and to a particular power pole. So we've added that in as an amendment as well to build 15 metres of footpath to take people up the road to a safer crossing point of Churchill Drive. We did make a couple of other minor changes, but I think all in all that's pretty much that project in a nutshell. Are there any questions?
Yes, we do have one from me and then Councillor Abdurrahman, and probably others. The safety aspects. So one of the submitters noted he was really concerned about the potential for oncoming trucks, he said, to meet each other and for there to be a collision because of the narrowing of the road. Can you give us any comments or feedback on the safety aspects of the design we're putting in?
Sure. Churchill Drive is actually a pretty wide road. So the lane widths that will remain afterwards are safe, and the project has been through 2 road safety audits.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Abdurrahman.
Kia ora, Claire, and through you, Madam Chair. You mentioned how the mistake of considering it as a minor when it's considered by the community as a major happened. And you also mentioned similar things happened previously, an example of the Karoriki as you mentioned. Is there any other that's currently in progress, and in the future how you plan to avoid such a mistake?
So one thing to note is after the Karori secondary connections came to you last time, we did actually make a change to our process. So we've pulled these papers out from being in the just standard pack of traffic resolutions to being their own standalone projects, and they had their own standalone web pages and information that people could go to. So we did improve the process based on that feedback. I guess I'm not sure whether we do feel like this was a bigger significance than low. I think what you heard from your other submitters on all of the TRs today, including the Broadmeadows one and the other one, Nalanda Creers, is that every individual feels like a change outside their street is a high impact to them. And so when we're considering significance, I guess we're considering more at a city scale on that criterion from high impact across a whole city, medium to low. And so the kind of guidance in the engagement policy is if it's affecting a low number of people. And when we did look at the off-street parking, we saw that this collection of houses, all but one had off-street parking, and there were 2 public parks available in the area. And that all led us to thinking this is a low impact. So I would say generally we find people find the change outside their house never feels low to them, but that's not the scale, I guess, we're using to assess it.
Thank you for that.
Sorry, just wanted to answer part B of your question, which is that we don't currently have any other minor traffic resolutions coming to you.
Cool. A follow-up to that is you decide based on the number of people impacted and the number of car park slots. It might be different case. I know this is where community requested for yellow line, and it's very small road, and where they were asked to go through consultations. That is a process that we have in some areas of the council. So what do we mean when we say low number, less number, or low car parks? Do we have a figure, 5, 10, 500?
We don't have a figure. I guess it is a subjective assessment. There's no kind of hard threshold, so we have to make an assessment based on what we know.
Okay, you're fine with that? Councillor Calvert.
Yeah, I'd be really interested to hear from our roading engineers, because I appreciate you made some changes, but I'm really looking for to hear from our roading engineers about whether they are they comfortable, or have they raised any concerns about the potential design, and if that has been resolved. I see them sitting in the room, which is why I asked that question, because I thought, well, you must be ready for one.
Thank you, Councillor Calvert. The answer to the question is we have gone through a couple of reviews of their original design. We highlighted safety issues and the hazards that the submitters have raised, and we have addressed them. But in terms of the construction drawings, we are yet to review that to make sure it hasn't changed since after the traffic resolution process.
Will you have an opportunity to not only review but to require some changes from a engineering safety perspective?
When it comes to the detailed design, that's when we get the exact dimensions on the ground to show where things are to be placed.
And what happens if something can't be implemented safely or in accordance with regulations? What happens then?
then we would not have that done on the ground, because safety comes first in any changes that we make.
Yeah. And are you comfortable about, I know there's probably a bit of leeway, but are you very comfortable that the road is, what's left on the road is wide enough for larger vehicles? I'm thinking buses and fire trucks and that to travel down safely?
Yes, we have checked the tracking path, and yeah, the two big vehicles can pass each other safely. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I actually had a question about some of the public transport concerns that were accessibility to the public transport and to the stops. I see there's a amendment which is usefully been sponsored by Councillor McNulty. Does that go far enough in actually asking you to look at some of the things that were raised, like steps, lights, and the actual difficulties that people are experiencing getting to the public transport, given that we're trying to move shift modes and we need to support that shift?
Yep. Jonathan doesn't have his glasses, so I'm just going to read it out loud. It says, request that council investigates options to improve pedestrian safety for residents of Churchill Drive to better connect to Izzard Park. Yeah, I think that investigate options, leaves it pretty broad to consider lighting and crossing facilities. You may want to include to Izzard Park and nearby public transport stops.
Yeah, I thought we maybe could, if with the leave of the person of Councillor McNulty, just maybe add something that says to better connect to Izzard Park and to facilitate better access to bus stops, something like that. Would that be acceptable if we added that by the leave of the meeting? I see nodding. Okay, that's basically my question. Thank you. We do have one from Councillor Randall, and I think Councillor Randall first, and then back to you, Councillor Calvert.
Hello. Yes, thank you. A couple of questions, please. First of all, how many cyclists use this route?
For the Wadestown Connections route, we have a counter on Molesworth Street, and we have an intern do counts on Park and Grant. And so our estimates are that there are 200 trips a day on this route.
200 trips, so that's about 100 cyclists each day, assuming they go both ways.
If you make that assumption, but that's a risky assumption to make.
Okay. So secondly, along this route, and how many cycling accidents have there been?
The number of cycling accidents has been low. On the Wadestown route, it's been around about 3 over a 10-year period that have been reported and entered into the CAS system. But the perception of danger is high, and that's something that we've learnt through the submission process and through the baseline survey.
Sorry to harp on, but this is Churchill Drive. How many cycling accidents have there been on Churchill Drive?
I can't break it down by the differentiating between Churchill Drive and Wadestown unless I had 10 minutes to do it.
Okay, and also the last thing, the road is getting narrow. What's the narrowest part of the road under this change? How narrow does it get?
I just calculated that yesterday, so I'll just bring that up in an email while you ask another question or someone else fills in.
No, that's my last question.
Okay, just a second.
Okay. How much time do you need? Just a bit more time? We could go to count. No, we'll just give you the time.
Okay, sure. Okay, so the answer that I typed out to this question yesterday is quite long, but starting from Wilton Road, the traffic lanes are, so I'm sorry if I'm going to sound like a computer here, but the lanes are 3.5, 3.4 with a 1.7 metre cycle lane, 3.6, 3.6 with a 1.5 metre cycle lane, 4 metres and 3 metre traffic lanes with a 1.5 metre cycle lane, 4, 3.3, 1.5, 3.4, 3.42, 3.3, 3.3, 1.9, 3.3, 3.3, 1.8, 4.2, 3.3, 1.8, 3.9, 3.2, 2.1. That takes us to Blackbridge Road. Heading up the other side of the road.
I just really want the lowest number.
Oh,
I don't
okay,
need all the
lowest
numbers.
number. There's a section where there's a right turn lane into Bowen Hospital, where there's a 1.6 metre separated cycle lane, a 2.8 metre lane, a 2.8 metre right turn lane, plus a 3.1 metre lane.
Okay, thank you.
Is that, are those all your questions, Councillor Randall?
Yes.
Okay. Councillor Calvert.
Yeah, just want to, whilst we've requesting that council investigates options to improve pedestrian safety, when is that likely to be able to be done?
So we would put that into the mix of the pedestrian walking improvements program, and it would get prioritised alongside of the other things in the program. There's lots of things in that walking program, so we need to make sure we're doing the most important things first. So I couldn't answer yet, but we can probably work with Soon's team to get a time.
Yeah, I mean, I do, as it's a pointed question, because, you know, I know we've got a priority pedestrian area on the corner of Station Road and Burma Road for Kandala, and that's been waiting since it's been on their thing, about 3 years.
Yeah.
And that's a top priority. So I'm really just trying to get a sort of a rough, you know, where would it roughly sit in the work program, or how long is the work program currently for pedestrian improvements for things that are on it? Is it a 3-year program, a 5-year program?
For the intersection of Station Road with Burma Road, we already have that in the minor works program.
Yeah.
And we are planning to design and further more construct.
But my question is that's already taken about 3 years, and that's a top priority. So I'm trying to get a gauge on, you know, even though we put this in, when is it realistically is it something able to be done?
I'm not sure. We've just got it now, so we'd need to go away. And
I think you're asking a
probably answer
funding
the question about how long this list is. So we've probably got sufficient work on our full list for 5 to 7 years.
Yeah, and that's, I suppose that's what, but we don't know where this might sit in the priority of that. Thank you.
Are there any further questions? No. Right. Okay, well, thank you very much. Lots and lots of work done behind the scenes, and lots of work, obviously, getting this to our committee in a formal format. It is my pleasure to move the paper. I think that, although I accept that this is a major change for a lot of our residents, I also found it really heartening that they acknowledged the excellent interactions that they had with our staff once they got that chance to talk with them. And I think that was reassuring to me, that they felt heard and that solutions were found, and that many of the submitters this morning actually acknowledged that it will make a big difference, and it suffices to make them much more comfortable with what we're doing. There were initially, when we went out for consultation, there was quite a bit of negative feedback, but when I analysed it, a lot of it was grizzles about things that aren't really part of this project, like chip seal and, just generally cars going too fast and the road just generally being too narrow in points, footpaths being too rough and unsafe. And so, in fact, with this project, we are able to deliver some things that help with some of that, and particularly the little section of footpath that's been put in. That was something that's happening now for this community that wouldn't have happened. The speeds, actually, what we've found in the past is when we put these projects in and the road narrows, the speeds actually come down. We've seen that on Evans Bay. That used to be a road that people went regularly at 60 kilometres around the coast, and now the average speeds are much more what they should be, at about 50 kilometres, and it's partly because it's been restricted. It actually makes it a lot safer. It's reassuring to hear the staff say that this has been through a safety audit process, to hear that tracking has been done, that it's had more than one lot of eyes over the concept, and that furthermore, by the time detailed design's done, there'll be yet another check to make sure that it meets our safety standards. I accept that this amendment that we're bringing to our staff to look at even further improvements for pedestrians and access to bus stops will just have to take its place in the queue. And that might be a resourcing issue that we look at through the long-term plan, because some of these issues really matter to our communities. And if we are asking people to walk more, use public transport more, and cycle more, we actually want to make sure that at the same time that we're taking away car parking, we're doing everything we need to do to make it easier for people to use these alternative ways of getting around. The outcome for me is that I'm actually really comfortable to vote in favour of this. I have no qualms really about it. I think, the things that we've heard today have really reassured me actually that it's a good plan. And I'm suffice to say, I'll be supporting it, and I really urge everyone around the table to vote positively for it as well. I think Councillor Paul's offered to second. Would you like to speak now? You know, reserve right. Would anyone else like to speak? Councillor Calvert.
Well, it might not surprise you to say that I am not supporting this. I am a local ward councillor. But what might even surprise you even further is I've actually regularly cycled, not in the last couple of years, this route, because this was an exercise route. And I'm going to surprise you even further, when I was training to ride 550 Ks in Vietnam. Now, I'm not a confident cyclist, so I make sure that I can cycle. It was, strength, but I chose that route from all the way from Kandala Road, right along at Churchill Drive, right through to Karori and back, because it was safe, and I felt safe. And as I said, I'm not a confident cyclist, and certainly wasn't when I was doing my training for my 550 Ks in Vietnam. So, and I've got a certificate to prove it if anybody doubts it. And so I know this route quite well. And as I said, we're making changes, we're being driven by KPIs, but we're not being driven by what the people, the residents of Wellington want. Now, you might well say, well, we approved the Pānaki Ponaki plan. I just want to remind you, we approved that in March last year. I missed the vote. I wasn't there to vote for it, but I wouldn't have voted for it anyway, because for the whole city, we had 1,140 submissions. And a lot of those were generated by advocacy groups to get a response on that. Now, this was a plan that's all of a sudden just been put on steroids. People haven't had time to adjust, haven't had time to amend. And if you want to know how many people responded from that area, Wadestown-Wilton were lumped into the Kandala-Nio group. They probably, a lot of them, if they'd even known that consultation was going on, might have missed it. But in terms of how many responded to that consultation from Wadestown-Wilton was 34 people. There's about 6,000 people that live in those two suburbs. So we're basing our plans on the feedback of 34 people. And in your hearing, and this is not just today, we're hearing it right across the city. We're making decisions based on a very limited feedback. People, it missed them. They didn't see it. They didn't see this consultation. And we're saying, well, we've signed off on the Pānaki Ponaki plan. And so this is why when you get this sort of thing happening, and all the people said, we didn't know about it. We had no knowledge. But we want to rush it through because we've got a KPI, and oh yes, we've got some money, but is that money best well spent on something like this? And I can tell you that the community want holistic plans. They will have cycleways through there, but they want to say, come and talk with us, see how the local shopping area works, see how the local community facilities works. Give us a holistic street plan so that you can plan to make sure the pedestrian improvements go in, not in 5 to 7 years' time, because who knows, we can put it in and it looks very grand that we are requesting officers, but we've got no idea how long it's going to take. And, have we got our resources in the right areas? Because I don't see, and this is why I raised this, a priority one, pedestrian improvement, is still waiting after about 3 years. I've got a whole range of emails I can show you where it keeps getting delayed and delayed and delayed. We had the Chater Street intersection in Karori. Again, we don't even know we've got funding that's a long-term fix. So we're not doing some of the other basic stuff that the people of Wellington expect to be done. That's what they're paying their rates for. So I'm not going to support this, and it's absolutely no excuse to say, oh, we're sorry we didn't engage well enough. I mean, we are a bureaucratic business with 1,800 people with very well-established processes and policies. And to miss something so fundamental as this, and this is the danger with us putting these things through as traffic resolutions. This is not a couple of yellow lines. This is actually impacting on how people use an area. So until we actually, as elected members, make a stand about this, that this is just not good enough, we're going to keep seeing this happening, and we're going to keep hearing apologies. We've got to actually do something about it. We have been elected to represent the people, and this is why I'm standing up for this area, because not only is it in my ward, but it's also, I'm seeing this right across the city. So, you know, we heard from the people of Wadestown Wilton. They said, we want to work with you, but you've got to give us a holistic solution. You've got to think about the pedestrians. We heard from Cycle Wellington. They wanted their response was very binary. And they certainly weren't into that holistic viewpoint of the local community. I just think everything this council does is doing it in a piecemeal. We've heard even about the cycleway. We're doing this bit, or we can't do this bit because this is too complicated, or we can't do this pedestrian because we haven't got that planned. We haven't got that. We haven't got any money in the budget or whatever. We've got to start taking a holistic, community-based, place-based approach to this stuff. Because until we start doing this, we are going to have these issues in front of us and not dealing with them properly. Now, I know I'm a lone voice on this committee because it's the way it's been structured, but I'm very, very clear about this, is that we should be sending a notice to our council officers. This is not good enough. And come back with a holistic position. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Calvert. Now, Councillor Pauiwi Kelly.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to begin with, first of all, thanking our public participants who came in today and took the time to come and talk to us and to explain to us how these changes would affect them. And I also would like to thank our officers for the explanation that they gave, because quite frankly, I was a little embarrassed as well when I heard that they had only got 10 days' notice. So thank you, Councillor McNulty, for expressing that to them when they were here. But that was really important for me to help me understand this recommendation that's been put before us. But I'm going to support this recommendation, and that's essentially because I think that we have to weigh up the benefits to everyone. And for me, I don't cycle. I was a postie for 8 years, and I loved it. That's the best job that I ever had in my life. But I can tell you probably can see I don't cycle anymore. But my grandchildren do, and so I want it to be safe for them. And we need to realise that we have to share the road. And what captured me is that there are 9,120 vehicles that use Churchill Road daily. And there are 200 cyclists. Now, we have to share the road, and Councillor Randall was asking how many accidents have there been. Well, I'm not really interested in how many accidents there's been, because for me, one is too many. So I think that we have landed at a good compromise here, with bringing back those 8 car parks. I want to thank the officers for doing that, and I think for the residents, maybe we didn't get it right, but I was really pleased to hear the effort that our officers put in to fix it, to engage with them and to come up with a solution that everyone was comfortable with. And what I heard from the participants today was that, yeah, they realise that they're losing these car parks, but they were comfortable with the resolution that was proposed, and they were still a little bit nervous because the decision hadn't been made. And I would ask the councillors, the rest of my colleagues around the table, that we do support this, because I think that it's a balanced approach that we have landed on, and I thank the officers for doing that, and for our roading team as well, for the mahi that you're doing, because it's not easy. But I would like to say, because I am a little bit annoyed with the comments that were made about a piecemeal approach that has been made, and how we don't know when these things are happening. But to be fair, the officers are only just now going to have this put before them. They don't have a crystal ball. They're not going to be able to tell us when it's going to happen. And if I could just, now this might upset a few councillors, but I'm going to say it, because if I could just say to the councillors, just think about what is going on. I see the calendar, and I can't believe how many briefings and how many workshops that have been calendared into the diaries. So if, as councillors, we stopped asking for these briefings and workshops, maybe our officers might be able to get on with doing the mahi that we have asked them to do. And maybe it's not going to take 7 years for the stuff to actually happen. Because for me, I'm quite happy to wait till I get the officers' papers, and get my papers and read my papers. And if I've got any questions or any concerns, I can get on the blower, I can email, and I can ask for clarification. But really, if we are really concerned about a piecemeal approach and how long the mahi is taken, think about the part that we as elected members are playing in the hold-ups, because it's ridiculous. I've been on a council before, and it is ridiculous how many workshops and how many briefings are in the calendar. Let our officers go and do their mahi. So I didn't want to end on that note, but it's upsetting me, and particularly for the criticism that has been given to our officers and our staff, because I'm really grateful for the mahi that you do, and it's not easy, and I'm grateful for my colleagues and the insights that they have as well. But hey, we got to work together, and we have to be realistic about what we're doing. So thank you, officers, for the compromise that you come up with. I'm going to support this 100%, and I think well done.
Well said. Right, well, who else would like to speak? And can we just keep it a little bit brief, because we've still got another cycleway paper and some ordinary traffic resolutions. Okay, second. Yeah. Oh, okay. You and then...
Yeah. No, very quickly, look, I just want to thank officers again, thank the public that have come in. I guess I'm just interested by Councillor Calvert's comments around piecemeal planning, because I think the Karori paper that's coming is quite interesting, because it is a pedestrian, bus and cycle network that comes together, and it is, in my opinion, from what I've seen, the opposite of piecemeal. So I guess I'll be interested to see when that one comes to regs what the reflections are, and if we've gotten it right on that one. But no, happy to support this paper as is.
Councillor Paul.
Yeah, I don't actually have a lot more to say, because I fully agree with everything that you said, Pauiwi Liz, and thought that was a really powerful and useful contribution to what we're trying to achieve today, which is just to get this section of the network done, not to relitigate the entire decision around it having a connected cycleway network in Wellington. I also want to thank officers, and I just want to particularly thank you, Councillor Free and Councillor McNulty, for your work that you've done on this paper, particularly around the pedestrian safety stuff. I think that will make a big difference to people's access to public transport, so thank you for that. One thing that I think really was reaffirmed for me this morning in the consultation is that, you know, I think that sometimes we don't really understand. Well, there's a bit of misunderstanding around the approach that we're taking to getting our cycleway network in place. This is not like a traditional council project where you have, you know, your 10 days or your 2 weeks to submit consultation and then something gets implemented and that's the end of the story. We've taken an adaptive approach that can continue to evolve over time based on feedback and based on actual use of the cycleway. That's why we're taking this low-cost, tactical, urbanist approach, which is where, you know, we put these things in place, but they're always able to be adapted to make sure that they're reaching the use and the benefits that we seek to achieve through having this network. So that's something that I think maybe some of us around the table need to have a better grasp of, is that this is an evolving thing that can be adapted over time. And that's what makes it such a great approach. And that's why we've been recognised internationally for the approach that we've taken to cycleways. And while we've gotten money, you know, from Bloomberg Initiative, because we're doing this so well. And yes, there are ways to improve that, and that's our job as councillors too, to make sure that we're being adaptive and listening to the feedback and applying those changes. There's people out there that say that we don't listen, but I think this committee shows that we do regularly listen, and we are trying to find a solution that makes sure that people are safe and they can shift modes and they can reduce their emissions, because that is exactly why we're doing it. And we won't reap the full benefits of the cycleway until we have the full network in place. And so that's why, like Liz was saying, we just need to get on with it. I think there is plenty of support for the Pāniki project in general, just because that was raised in debate, and that is reflected in the consultation that we've seen. It's also reflected in the election results, and I'm sure it will be reflected again in next Saturday, that there is a lot of support for cycleways, and I know that because I've been out in the community, and they applaud when people bring up how much money we've invested into cycleways. So finally, I just want to end it on another note that Pauiwi Liz raised around your mokopuna and wanting them to be able to get around safely. And I have a 10-year-old niece and a 4-year-old nephew that live on this route, and I look forward to being able to have a cycle with them. And I know that it's important for them to be able to get around their neighbourhood safely and independently as well. So this will be great for them, and the sooner we get this whole network up and going, the sooner we will reap all the full benefits of the network. So thanks again to the officers.
Thank you. And just a very brief right of reply. Well, I think actually nobody knows more than I do the challenges of being a local ward councillor and having quite a lot of cycleways put into your community. But what I will say is when you work hard and you really do listen and you come up with that sweet spot, which is about as good as you can get, and not everybody's completely happy with that, but nobody's furious, that's about as good as it gets. And but when you do that and you do it consistently and you're building towards a vision, what you will find, and I can attest to this, having been elected 4 times consecutively, is that your community actually will support that. And I believe that we're at the very beginning of putting in cycleways in the western suburbs, and I'm really pleased that we're getting up to the west, because in my heart of hearts, you know, I think the east has been a bit spoilt. We've had some beautiful cycleways put in and some other ones that weren't quite so enthusiastically received, but have actually proved to be really good. And when the people start to see what this can do, the transformational difference that it can make, we'll actually have a huge amount of gratitude. And they will understand why they've missed out a little bit here and there, because it is for a bigger picture. So I'd just like to reassure you, Councillor Calvert, history will prove us right, I think, in what we're trying to do here. But at the same time, we do need to be very mindful about what we're doing, and when we can see that we can make a compromise that will still allow for an integrity in what we're delivering, but will be a bit of a compromise, I think we're right to take it. Thank you, Pauiwi Liz, for really making some very good points, and I always appreciate what you bring, because you come from outside of, you've been on another council, and sometimes your perspective is very valuable, and I think everything that you said we really do need to think about and reflect on. You know, whatever stress we experience doing this work, our officers are experiencing it as well in a different way. And, you know, for me it was, as I said before, it was so heartening to hear the positive feedback that we got about the work that our officers are doing. I thank you, Claire, in particular, because you've held this work now yeah, of course, Jonathan, but also Claire, in that bigger picture, you've held it over several projects now, and that's for a couple of years now, and that's not to be sneezed at. That's a really impressive thing that you are doing and your team. Probably not too much more to say. Let's vote.
Wanted something separately. So can we have number 5 taken separately?
Sure. So, we'll do 1 to 4 now. And we'll take a division. Okay, thank you. That's carried. And we'll do number 5. Wonderful. And we'll move straight into the next cycleway paper. If we may have you back, please, Claire and Jonathan. Just noting that this paper didn't receive quite as much submissions and opposition, did it?
No, it received fewer submissions and 50-50 support. So this is the Wadestown Connection Stage 1. So the scope of this project goes from Tinakori Road, connects into the top of the Thorndon connections that you approved in May. And we'll go up Park Street, Grant Road, and then it follows up Wadestown Road to the Wadestown shops. So Linnell Road is the main route for vehicles, and that's why Wadestown Road was selected, as it's a much lower traffic volume route. Similar area servicing Wadestown. Wadestown's about a 15-minute bike ride max from the city centre, and there's one of the highest rates of active commuters, both walking and cycling from Wadestown. So it's a really good suburb to connect into. This one, the team, Jonathan and Bree, have been engaging on for a few more months. And so this engagement has included some drop-in sessions and some walking tours with the residents in this area as well. It's a slightly bigger group of residents that is affected than the Churchill Drive one. But I will hand over to Jonathan. Again, we had some good suggestions through consultation and have made some amendments. So I'll hand over to Jonathan.
Cool, thanks. So this traffic resolution is for, once again, an uphill cycle lane, and it's also 1.6 kilometres long. It starts on Park Road, which is, Park Road is a short street with where we're planning installing separators up to Grant Road, and then due to an amendment, the cycle lane will not be separated. In fact, there won't be a cycle lane for a section going up Grant Road for one block. The reason for that is that somebody just around the corner on Park Road, there's a woman who's 94 years old, and her son has multiple sclerosis, so they need a mobility park. So we've put in an amendment to install a mobility park after meeting with the affected people. And then we've also made amendments to change the mix of coupon and residence parking, because we heard from the residents on Grant Road in particular that they didn't want a reduction in the number of residence parks. So we've made an amendment which means that there's net zero change in resident parks. Then the road goes the route goes up Wadestown Road, and it's a relatively low density area. There are very few houses in the first 600 or 700 metres. It's a reasonably narrow road, so we can't have separators, so it will be a painted cycle lane, which means that large vehicles can track over the painted lines if they need to pass other vehicles on the road. The traffic volumes are much lower on Wadestown Road. There are 1,800 vehicles a day. And then when it gets to the top of Wadestown Road, a lot of traffic peels off and goes up Roscoe Terrace. And so for the last few hundred metres on a flat section of Wadestown Road, the cycle lane will end, and that will just become a quiet street with sharrows on it in both directions, where we don't have a cycle facility other than the sharrows on the road. One of the reasons for doing that as well is that some of the houses along that section of road don't have off-street parking. All of the houses up to Roscoe Terrace have off-street parking, but some of them between Roscoe Terrace and the Wadestown shops don't. So we didn't want to, we couldn't remove the parking on one side of the road anyway. So the majority of the car parks are staying on that section of road where the traffic volumes are about 690 a day and the traffic speeds are around about 30 kilometres per hour rather than 50. We're also, as part of this project, planning to raise the 2 zebra crossings in the Wadestown shops, paint a mural on the concrete wall opposite the Wadestown shops. That obviously doesn't require traffic resolution. Close a gap in a section of footpath on the old Wadestown Road where the footpath just ends, and there's a section where people have to walk on the road. And install a seat at a lookout about halfway up Wadestown Road where there's a lookout over the harbour. I think in summary we've gone through about 14 days of formal consultation, but before that we had a number of meetings with Wadestown residents. We had a public meeting at the library. We've had 3 walking tours and a few on-site visits during consultation. And I think to conclude, Wadestown Road in particular, it's a narrow, windy road, and it's really not appropriate to have parked cars on such a narrow, windy road with poor sight lines. It currently forces cars on every trip up and down Wadestown Road to cross double yellow lines, which is not the intent of double yellow lines. So we believe that this proposal would make Wadestown Road safer for cyclists, but also safer for drivers. Thanks very much.
Right, question from Puiwi Kelly.
So you would have heard, I forget what his name was.
John.
Yeah. John. Yeah, you would have heard John ask about the possibility of converting a couple more for residents parking. What's your view on that?
That's the amendment.
Yes,
but that's only for one, and he had said if it was possible to have a couple more.
Yes. At the moment, the occupancy of the residence parks in that area is 70%. On average, it's 70%, and the occupancy of the coupon parks is 85%. So finding the right balance is never easy. Residence parks are a higher priority in our parking policy. So that's a good reason for adding 1 or 2 residence car parks, but on the other hand, the residence car parks aren't being used at full capacity at the moment, so that's a reason for not. So, I mean, I'm happy to.
As it, from what I understood him saying, because they're going to lose some car parks, that was why he was saying, or did I get that wrong?
No. They're going to lose 3 coupon parks, and his point was that those coupon parks are currently used by residents. So, a household can get a residence parking permit, but they can also get coupon parking permits. So some of the residents, especially if it's a house with more than 2 cars, will have to get coupon parking permits. So what he's pointing out is that although we're trying to rebalance that, his view is that because
what's your view?
My view is that the statistics are probably correct, and that the number of residence parks is sufficient as is, but it wouldn't do any harm to add another resident park.
One more.
And that's why we have, that was recommendation E, so I took some officer advice on this. He asked for 2, the officer advice is maybe 1 more rather than 2.
2 was okay. Is that what you said, that 2 was okay?
I think 1 is a better balance.
Okay, cool. I don't want to confuse it.
Okay. And remembering that it is a transitional design, so that's exactly the kind of thing we can come back to and adjust quite easily. Are there any other questions on this? That was a good question. That was my question as well, which, yeah. Right, well, that being the case, we have to thank you once again very sincerely. I'm happy if someone else wants to move this. Otherwise, I will. Okay. Is that okay? Okay. Well, I'll move this with the officer recommendations plus the extra one that I've added, which we've just heard the advice on. He was quite clear that he would like 2 more. Officers felt comfortable to add 1 more, but didn't recommend adding 2 because there's still the need for visitors to that area. And, so I'm respecting that and just trying to listen to the resident, but also balancing it with the officer advice. This one didn't have as much opposition as the other proposal, but it did come with some concerns from Councillor Randall. I don't know if he's still online. He was quite concerned about the narrowness of some of the lane widths, and we went back to officers and checked that advice, and where the road gets very, very narrow, there won't be a separator. So as long as there's no cyclists using it, there's room to stretch a little bit for emergency vehicles and for anything else that needs to, a couple of big trucks wanting to pass at the same time. We don't anticipate that happening heaps, but that's has been thought about, and again, I know the safety audits have been done on this scheme, and again, it will have a once-over checking once we get to the detailed design. So, as I think we've said it all before, but I'm really pleased that we are doing this for the Western Ward, and once again, I think the number of amendments shows that despite the compressed time frame in which we're trying to do this, officers have had really good opportunities to interact with our residents and to receive feedback and actually to make some adjustments. And bearing in mind, as Councillor Paul has said so eloquently, these are transitional cycleways, and from my experience with them, they're open for adjustment, sort of 3 weeks to a month after they're installed. And that sometimes happens, sometimes doesn't need to happen. And then there's ongoing work to make sure that they're doing what they should do, which takes place over the next few months. Right, well, that's me. Seconding by Pauiwi Kelly. Do you want to speak now? You don't need to. Is there anyone else? Councillor Calvert.
Thank you. And, still in my ward, and I've been elected 3 consecutive times because I've only been on council for 3 terms as an independent. And you've only got to look at the voting in the Onslow Western Ward to see where people's views are in terms of the cycleways. And I know I've talked to a lot of people in Wadestown, and they just feel worn down because of the way the engagement has happened. So you might commend it, but I can also tell you that a lot of people in Wadestown have felt very uncomfortable about this whole approach, and almost sort of basically given up and saying, well, it's not, we can't have it. No one's listening. And so, yes, and I think it'll be interesting to see the election results, especially that come from the Onslow Western Ward in 10 days' time, and where people view things. So I'm not going to support this, because the other thing is the people of Wadestown have also been asking for a parking management plan. This was one of the meant to be the first cabs off the rank, but they're still waiting after several years. So again, is things that are really important. There's a 30k speed limit put through Wadestown Village. The people of Wadestown have said, you can't just put a sign up. We need some traffic calming as well. And the people of Wadestown have also said, that's fine. If you move the cars off the street, and it sounds very noble, but the thing is they're concerned about then that there's no barriers to slow the speed down. So, we haven't, again, and I'll talk about the piecemeal, because there's piecemeal in terms of this. But I actually agree with Pauiwi Kelly saying comments before about we have so many briefings, but it's about the quality of the briefings, and it's about how this council and the elected members.
I think we'll just stick to this paper.
Yeah, and I know, but the elected members. It's in their power to make sure that we don't overburden our officers with things to do. because we always seem to keep adding stuff to plans, and we need to be very conscious about the capacity of this organisation to actually deliver. So I won't be supporting this proposal.
Thank you, Councillor Calvert. Do we have any further debate? No? Seconder, you didn't want to, and I don't really particularly feel a need for right of reply either, so let's just get to the vote. Well, we'll have a division. Thank you. And do we need to take anything separately? No. No, okay. Right, and that is carried. And I'd just like to thank all of the team again and soon, and Eduardo, I know you'll probably be staying on for the next bit, but thank you to everyone. Yeah. Evandro, yeah. Evandro, sorry, I think I made a mistake. Yeah.
Okay, I can introduce the traffic resolutions paper. So this is for the more minor traffic resolutions. We've got 8 in front of you today, and we have Suntek and Evandro here, and we also have Alex from Metlink here to answer any other questions you may have about any of the modifications we're making to accommodate the public transport system.
Thank you for that. Does anyone have any questions? Councillor McNulty.
Yeah, just on Nalanda Crescent 11923. So is there any ability to take into account the residents' feedback this morning around just some small amendments to those yellow lines so that that space can be retained?
Yes. What we have taken into account when looking at the broken down lines was the fact that it is illegal to park within 6 meters of a driveway entrance, and also the site distance checks for vehicles to turn from Nalanda onto Rajnok and vice versa. And with that in mind, in terms of the side distance checks and the fact that it's also illegal to park within a meter from a driveway entrance, there will be no physical space for a vehicle to be legally parked within the space that was a complaint from the resident. And we also took into account that the property owner has its driveway, which means that if another vehicle would park outside that property, that would become some illegal behavior, which would require our parking officers to go out on site. And so that's the reason why we have decided to extend the broken lines to the property entrance.
Thank you for that. I've got a couple of questions, and they're actually for Alex. Alex, I know, thank you. So just going back to the Churchill Drive cycleway that we've just approved, there was actually one bit of feedback we did receive was just about the need for shelters at bus stops 5136 and 4136. Is there any way we can feed that to you, and what sort of priority? It's along Churchill Drive, you're possibly not aware of it, but how would we facilitate some further thought around bus shelters?
Through you, the Chair, that's a request that you can make. I mean, obviously it'll be down to the geometric challenges of that location. There are some areas where it's quite constrained. It would have to be a site investigation to see what's feasible. Okay, but we can work through the officer space to do that. And then the second, I wanted to ask about the bus stop up in Broadmeadows, I think it is. And this isn't an area I'm really 100% familiar with. Yeah, gosh. I couldn't see a matching. I wasn't quite clear where the matching bus stop on the other direction was. And I wondered if you could perhaps give us some background on what's actually happening up there with bus stops. Because there's been a suggestion that we could do with fewer bus stops, obviously from a resident, but...
Yes, through you, Chair. there's a little bit of history with these bus stops. So the bus stops in question that we've been discussing here are long-standing bus stops that have been in place for over 20 years, and they are spaced approximately 100 to 200 metres apart. The stops on the other side of the road were installed for 2018 when the bus route was changed from a peak-only service to an all-day, 7-day-a-week service. And those were installed approximately 300 metres apart. So I guess that reflects the different standards at the time those stops were installed, and probably some practical, pragmatic decisions on the ground around where could we get stops that would have the least, would maximise coverage but have the least impact on residents.
At one point it was a one-way circuit, wasn't it? Has there ever been any thought to reconsidering that? Just cutting back on the numbers of shelters and the numbers of stops?
Yeah, so there is a preference for the directional bus stops, which is where we have the inbound route heading to the city on one side of the road and the outbound route to Johnsonville with the stops on the other side of the road. That comes from customer accessibility and bus operator feedback. So there's basically three factors with that. The accessibility side is just purely for customers that have visual impairments. It's just easier to know that if I stand at that bus stop, the bus that pulls up will be the bus I want, without having to ask the driver. For the drivers, it's easier because if they see a customer at the bus stop, they know that one wants my bus, and I don't have to stop and check to see which way they're travelling. And the third issue is one that's called masking, where the first bus coming along, because you've got buses up to every 10 minutes operating on this route at peak times, the first bus pulls up, sees that there might be one or two or more people at the bus stop. It stops to pick those people up, and another bus going in the other direction comes up behind. And sometimes, while the drivers should check, regardless, sometimes they'll think, oh yeah, no, those customers are getting on the bus in front. They drive by and in the process then miss a customer. So it creates an extra level of anxiety for customers because they're thinking, no, I don't want this bus that's pulled up in front of me. I want the other one behind, and maybe it's not going to see me here and it'll drive past and not pick me up. So it's just, as I say, it is only a preference. There's no hard rule that you can't, but that's where it comes from.
Oh, thank you. That's useful, actually. Those are my questions. Do we have any other? Yeah, right, Councillor Abdurrahman.
Kia ora, Tim. And my question is regards to the Island Bay on Avon Street. It's not specific to that one. I want to ask, how do you prioritize when it comes to those traffic suggestions, for the fact that I know it is a bit more dangerous and there is someone who's been asking for a very long time when you come down from the hockey stadium, and where it's a bit more dangerous and a lot of car movement there in comparison to 611 on Avon Street. I do support this one, but how do you usually prioritize those things? Is that community asking you, and then that how you respond?
We generally receive complaints from the public. So someone calls Wellington City Council, and then that would come for our assessment. And we would proceed with the assessment of the resident who would have made the complaint. We'll do some checkings on site, and we'll also verify if there are safety reasons to justify the proposal. And so then we proceed with traffic resolution, if that's the case.
Cool. I will follow up with that case. I raised it, but my second question is regard to the EV parking in Newtown on Mansfield Street, which I do support. But as you know, the parking management plan is changing in Newtown. All this is coming. How that fit into it? Is that better to wait sometimes to do all together, or is that something that do you guys communicate with the other branch? That's my broader question.
Yeah, we coordinate our works with other teams. For the EV chargers, the requirement is slightly different because they need to check some specific locations where there is adequate power, and also there are other safety aspects. For example, if there's a safer turning movement, if there's adequate footpath, etc. So the number of locations for EV chargers is quite limited, which means that we would proceed with the EV chargers individually and with the parking management apart from it.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions? I believe Siobhan has something to say.
Oh, so just before you get into debate, I just want to acknowledge Evandro. Evandro is leaving us to join Hutt City Council, so there again, our loss, but thank you very much for your contribution.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Chair, I'm trying to put my hand up here.
Oh, Ray.
Yeah. Thanks very much. I'd like to comment on the Broadmeadows, the Canpu and Nalanda bus stops. The residents there, I've been speaking with all the residents around that bus stop and talking about their issues. The issue was, and as Flora and Albert mentioned this morning, was just removing the lines, taking away one car park in front of the house. I've always been in favour of supporting the greatest number of people who benefit from these things. And I catch that bus regularly, most days, and I notice that there's usually about between 5 and 8 people standing at that bus stop. So it is a very well patronised bus stop, because all the people from the end of Nalanda walk down to go to that one.
Councillor
And so,
Chung, are you asking a question here?
yeah, I am asking questions. So can that bus stop be moved closer to 5 metres closer to Nalanda and still have that paper in and paper out so that they could retain their bus stop, retain their car parks in front of their house?
As part of our assessment, we also checked side distance checks, and also we do take into account that there is some possibility of a driver to try to overpass a bus who would be dropping off passengers. If we would relocate by 5 meters or so, that could potentially cause a safety issue towards the intersection. And for this reason, our preference would be to keep the bus stop as proposed.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Councillor Chung. Just a follow-up question on that. I know we have standards for the tapers in, but that one, if it were a little bit shorter, might allow for 2 car parks opposite 109 and 109A. Are you firm in the view that we need that taper to extend over the boundary there?
What we normally take into account is the 1 meter rule from a driveway and the space required for 2 vehicles, for 1 or 2 vehicles to park within the space. I can follow up on that just to check what's the distance that we do have, and if that's the case, we may be able to work an amendment plan.
Okay, well, we'll leave that with you as a follow-up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. Are there any further questions on any of these? Right, well, thank you very much, and thank you for all the work that goes in behind the scenes, and we will miss you, Evandro.
Thank you.
But congratulations, and all the best with the new role.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. I believe Councillor McNulty is going to move this one.
Happy to move today's TRs. I guess, you know, there's always a little bit of an uncomfortability that the law is a bit of an arse, for a lack of a better term, when it comes to some of these traffic resolutions when we're formalising these bus stops, even though the rules have always been there. Once we actually go to that point of making them formal, it does disrupt residents. And I do wonder if we need to, if there's a missing communication piece around actually having residents understand in these circumstances where they might not have a formalised bus stop or the like, what the rules are that are currently in place, because I can see how this comes as a unwelcome surprise to many, and I can think of some more TRs that are on the way to this committee where I'm dealing with the issue right now. So just something on top of the mind, but I do thank the officers for the good work that they put into this. This is quite a nice suite of TRs, much less controversial than some more recent committees that we've had, and much less in number as well. So happy to move them.
Thank you. And does anyone want to second? Okay, thank you, Councillor Paul. Don't need to speak. Look, I did have some, I had a preference to be very sympathetic to our submitter that wanted her 4.5 metre space left in front of her house. But we have had some advice about sightlines, and I think safety does need to be our first consideration, so I'm going to support that. Yes. Look, on balance, I think actually these TRs were reasonably well received. As Councillor McNulty said, we've had a lot more contentious ones in the past, so I'm planning to support everything as is. But do thank the officers for having another look at Camper Road, just in case there is an opportunity to have an extra car park there. Is there any further debate? Ray? Okay, well, with that...
Yep,
right.
yep. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, Cross. Sorry.
Keep it brief because we're trying to finish for lunch.
Yep. Okay. Well, lunch is very important. I actually disagreed with Bert and Flora this morning when they asked to have that bus stop removed, because it is a very popular bus stop, and I think that it is necessary. What Evandro was saying about the sight lines, or sorry, the buses, different buses coming up on both sides, that's actually not relevant in Broadmeadows, because there's only one bus that goes up there, so there's no chance of confusing them with any other number bus. So I think that it's I agree with safety must be the first issue, and so I agree that we need to maintain that, and I think that having taper in and taper out lines in front and behind buses is actually very, very necessary, because I've been on the bus so many times when the buses can't pull over to the footpath. So I agree with these TRs.
Great. Anything else? Right of reply, if you want it. We don't need it. Okay, we'll go to a vote. That's my thing. What have I done with it? Here it is. That's passed unanimously. And now we move just to the last couple of things, which is our action tracking and our forward program. And I will move. I think I did have one question. Do you want to introduce the paper?
Yes, so are we doing both together? Actions
We might as
tracking?
well.
Yeah. Okay, so introducing both actions tracking and forward program. Actions tracking, while we continue to address a lot of the actions, we still have 93 open, but that's an indicator of the volume of work that we have on the go. And in the forward program, you'll see that we don't have a formal meeting next month, but we do have oral hearings, and we'll hear one of the papers at that one of the oral hearings. And December's quite a full agenda.
Any questions? Councillor Calvert.
Yeah, so we had the forward program on the last Regulatory Processes Committee, which was 6 weeks ago, and the only item on the agenda for this today was actually the leases. So I'm just wondering, obviously, officers were aware that they're working on, the proposed other traffic resolution. So, excuse me, I just wondered how accurate this forward program actually is.
It's as accurate as we know today, and I know they are subject to change. So we are always trying to improve our planning, but I take your point. But at the moment, there's nothing more that we're going to have on for these 2 months.
Okay. And given the way these traffic... I've been on the Regulatory Processes Committee on and off for the last 6 or 7 years, and traffic resolutions used to be just traffic resolutions, like a bus stop or yellow lines or whatever. Now we've got the bike lane stuff coming in, which is opening up a lot of aspects around broader planning, other elements. But I looked at the planning and environment terms of reference, which they're only really dealing from planning from an RMA or district plan perspective. So just wondering whether going forward, and I know there's a review of the committees and that, whether officers have a view about whether we're clear about how we handle such things that impact on a place-based area. That is not an RMA district plan issue, but it's not. It's a bit broader than a yellow line.
So generally, when we look at the investment delivery framework, which we follow internally in terms of how we deal with projects, we have a gate, which is business case, which is normally dealt with in the Environment and Infrastructure Committee, so they will approve a business case. Traffic resolutions tend to be a vehicle by which you enact the decisions made in that business case, and then also another opportunity to engage and consult with the community on the details of that. So if we think at business case, you're at concept design, at traffic resolution, you're at detailed design, so it provides another opportunity to seek community feedback. But the key decision is made by council whether to invest in that scheme, whether it's a bike lane or any other bus priority or anything like that. That key decision is made by Environment and Infrastructure.
Okay. So is there a way that we could connect to that infrastructure report? Because if we're looking at, is this in conjunction with the business case and how that business case is tracking, whether we can tie the two things together? Is there an opportunity to see that information?
So one thing that we could look at doing to improve that is in the traffic resolution, make the reference to the decision that was made in the Environment and Infrastructure Committee, so you have that link.
And I wonder whether it can also be linked to the quarterly review of the actual projects or cases?
Yeah, and your quarterly review will report on what the status of those projects is and where it is in that framework.
Yeah, so that we can see how it's factoring in there. Yep. Okay, thank you.
Just a minor one from me. I note that we're still, it's with iwi, looking into the change of Ipuni Street to Te Puni, and I wondered if there's any chance to kind of maybe advance that a wee bit. Yeah, because I'd love to see that done before. Yeah, I mean, you know, if it's just a correction, it seems to me it's either a yes or a no, basically. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Well, I'm just bringing that. It is on our action. It is on. Yeah. Well, definitely once it comes. Yeah. All right. Are there any other questions? Yes, Councillor Abdurrahman.
I know we really need to go for lunch, but
that's okay.
I just got in this forward. Programming, there is a road work currently happening in Kilbirnie on Bay Road, which I'm a bit familiar with. And two of the businesses, they're kind of to do a very small work. They just covered the whole area, and where one of the shops, she made the whole week only $15. And the other shop next door, which is the barber shop, and he didn't make much money, and they complain a lot. And they even send an email to council requesting if they can get some kind of support. So while we're doing a lot of great jobs, I think it's really very important to acknowledge how some of the businesses are getting very difficulties. We need to find a way we can even sometimes compensate them. It's a bit extremely unfair. It's completely blocked. I saw it, and there is a picture they sent us through as well.
Okay.
This is one that I know it's going to be finished. It was planned to be finished, and it didn't finish in the time frame as well.
I think this is probably beyond the scope of our committee,
yeah, but I'm just
it's with, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Fair enough point, but yeah, probably something we need to raise at councillor any time or some other kind of forum, but yeah, Councillor Paul. No? Okay, right. If there's nothing else, is there any debate? No, right. Who moved it, by the way? I moved it. Did I have a seconder? I think I had Councillor Kelly. Here we go. Sorry, I've done that so many times. Pauiwi. Yeah. 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 And I can, under stress, I find it hard to remember how to say your surname, Councillor. Come on. Pauiwi Hohaya. Hohaya. No, it's not hard to say, Kelly. There we go. Okay, so we'll just say the closing karakia. Unahia, 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 ki te urutapa nui, kia wātio, kia mama, te nako, te tinana, te wairua, I te ara takatu, koe rā I rongo, whakailia aki ki runga, kia wātia, ai rā, kua wātia. Thank you, everyone. I declare the meeting closed until next time, and we have a wee break until our very full-on next month.
Which I won't be here for.